All right, Algebra 2, here we go. This is your review assignment. We had to do question number 2. We did this one in class. We'll do it again. So we're trying to change what is the number of degrees in an angle whose radian measures 11 pi over 18. So we take 11 pi over 18 and we multiply it by over 12. Sorry, 11 pi over 12, and we're going to multiply that by 180 over pi. So multiplying by 180 over pi, the pi's cancel. I'm going to start breaking up the 12. I know 6 goes into 12 twice, and I know 6 goes into 180 30 times. I know 2 goes into itself once, 2 goes into 30 15 times. This just simply becomes 11 times 15. 11 times 15 is going to equal 165 degrees, and that is going to be choice 2. The other thing I want you to know is we could have eliminated 2 choices automatically. 11 over 12 is a little bit less than 1. Anytime you multiply 11 over 12 by anytime you multiply a number that's a little bit less than 1, you're going to get something smaller than that number. Pi is 180 degrees, so we're going to get a number that's smaller than 180 degrees. That means that those 2 would have to be out. All right, so then you're down to a 50-50, and then if you go through it, you can see it's 165. Next question. Next question, number 5. All has to do with the understanding that when I'm taking a look at a graph, this is actually spelling it out for me. Y is equal to f of x. They want to know when f of x is going to be 0. If I connect the 2, basically they're looking for when y is going to be 0. Well, y is going to be 0 when the graph hits the x-axis, because that's where all points in the x-axis is when y is 0. So can we determine the points of the graph? Absolutely. There's 1, there's 1, and there's 1. That's a -2, 0, and 3. Those are my solutions to the graph. It was that easy. Jumping to question number 6, another easy 2 points. We're trying to simplify the square root of -300. So if I want to try to simplify that, I'm going to break that up into a perfect square, 100 times 3. Just make the perfect square negative. Then when I take the square root of -100, I get 10i square roots of 3, and I'm done. Choice 3. Question number 7. Question number 7 is just identifying the differences between a combination and a permutation. Here we go. 20 different cameras will be assigned to several boxes. 3 cameras will be randomly selected and assigned to box A. Which expression can be used to calculate the number of ways 3 cameras can be assigned to box A? Well, we have 20 cameras, and we're choosing 3 at a time. Okay, so that's what's really happening here. So what's going to happen, and the way we do it, it's either going to be a combination or a permutation, so we can get rid of these 2 choices. The differences between these 2 is if order matters, or if you see the word arrangement, it's going to be a permutation. If order doesn't matter, then it's going to be a combination. So if I take camera number 1, camera number 5, and camera number 13, and I put it in box A, if I take 13, 5, and 1, or if I take 5, 13, and 1, are these any different cameras that we're actually putting into box A? And the answer there is no. So basically, the order in which we do things in this question doesn't matter, and that's what makes it a combination. Okay? Number 8, we're going to do this one. This one looks hard, but if we do this one step by step, GCF is the first thing we're going to do. Watch what happens after we take the GCF. The greatest common factor, that means the greatest common piece that can divide evenly into each of these terms. We can definitely take a 2 out of the coefficient. How many x's can we take out of all the terms? We can take 2 out, and then we're going to write down what's left. So if I take a 2 out of the 12, I get a +6. Again, you're dividing. What do I have left with the x to the 4th? If I take 2 of them out, you're left with x squared, plus divide 10 by 2, I get 5. I take 2 x's out, I'm left with an x. Divide -12 by 2, I get -6. I'm going to take the 2 x's out. All right. Right away, if you have 2x squared as a factor, take a look at your answers. I can throw out choice 1 and choice 2. Can't be answers to this question. Now, so in other words, it's either going to be choice 3 or 4. And rather than factor this is a hard factoring technique. Rather than factor that, we should be able to do it, but rather than do that, I'm going to go to choice 3. And what I'm going to do in choice 3 is I'm going to take 2x minus 3, and I'm going to multiply it by 3x plus 2. Because there's the 2x squared, there's the 2x squared. If this product becomes 6x squared plus 5x minus 6, then that's my answer. And if it doesn't, then choice 4 is my answer. FOIL, f, 6x squared. Outer, 2x times a positive 2, that's positive 4x. Minus 3 times 3x, that's my inner, minus 9x. And my last, negative 3 times a positive 2, that's minus 6. I get 6x squared, then minus 5x minus 6. Is that? No, it's not, because it's a positive 5x. That can't be my answer. Choice 4 is the actual answer. Okay? I'll go to question number 9. Question number 9 is a quadratic. I have y squared minus 3y. If I'm solving a quadratic, I got to get 0 on one side, so I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. There it is. If it's going to be a quadratic and I'm solving it, looking at the answers, it's going to be using the formula. So a is 1, b is equal to the number in front of y, that's negative 3, and c is going to be the constant, negative 9. Write the formula down for the quadratic. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, that's a formula that's not on the formula sheet. You have to know it. Sorry, I had that outside the box. That's a formula that's on the formula sheet, not on the formula sheet. Sorry, you're going to have to know that coming in, and shame on you guys if you don't know that formula yet. We've worked on it over and over again. You have to know that formula. The way I use the quadratic is I start with b squared minus 4ac, and you'll kind of see why I do that. Well, b squared, that's a negative 3 squared, that's a positive 9. Then I write down minus 4 times a times a negative 9. I always write it this way so I can see how many negatives I have. I have 2 negatives, that's a positive, and 9 times 4 is 36, so I get 45. And then I'm going to simplify the square root of 45. Well, the square root of 45 is going to get broken up into 9 times 5, sorry. And the square root of 9 becomes 3, so I get 3 square roots of 5. One of the things I want you to see is if I take a look at the choices, this is a positive 45. So when I take the square root of a positive 45, I get a real number, not an imaginary number. So choice 1 and choice 2 are gone because they have imaginary roots. So it's either going to be choice 3 or choice 4. I actually didn't even have to simplify the square root of 45 because if you take a look at the difference between these, both answers are the same exact answer, except the number out in front, the 3 is negative here and it's positive here. So let's figure it out. In the formula, it's negative b. Well, if b is already a negative 3, then negative that is a positive 3. So it's choice 4. All right, so there's my answer. Hopefully we're good with that, and we're going to move on. Last question of this first homework set is question number 12. In question number 12, we have to simplify this. And you have to remember, we're trying to write it as an equivalent fraction. We're not allowed to have a square root in the bottom. So I'm going to take the square root of 3 plus 5 over the square root of 3 minus 5. If the square root is in the bottom and it's by itself, you can just multiply top and bottom by that square root. But if the square root's in the bottom and it's part of a binomial, you need to multiply the top and bottom by the conjugate. The conjugate of the bottom. Well, the conjugate of the bottom would be the same two terms but a different sign between them. So it's the square root of 3 plus 5. Square root of 3 plus 5. When I'm multiplying conjugates, you could do all of FOIL, but if you remember, basically it's just f minus l. So f is going to be the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, that's 3, minus l is 25. So in the bottom, I'm going to get a negative 22. In the top, you have to do all of FOIL. So f is going to be the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, that's 3. The outer is going to be 5 times the square root of 3, that's 5 square roots of 3. The inner is going to be 5 times the square root of 3, that's 5 square roots of 3. And the last is going to be 5 times 5, which is 25. Moving that down here, I'm going to get 3 and 25, that's 28. 5 and 5, that's 10 square roots of 3. All right? Sorry. First of all, we take a look at the answers. What you need to see is I'm going to have 22. I have 22 in the bottom, and I'm going to have to simplify that. So if I wanted to simplify that, I can take any factor I want out of 22. I'm never going to get 14, so I can get rid of those. All right? And also, if we take a look at this, and we'll finish the problem, but if you take a look at this, 11 is now in the bottom, which I can get 22 to become, but in the top, I need to get 28 to either become 14 or 17. Well, there's nothing I can divide 28 by to make it 17, so that's gone. So the answer is going to be choice 1, and I don't even have to try to simplify this. But when I simplify, I can factor 2 out of the top. 2 goes into 28 14 times, plus 2 goes into 10 5 times. over a negative 22. These will cancel, leaving me with the 11 on the bottom, putting the minus sign out in front, and that's how we get choice 1. All right? So that's that first review.